Tonight, Saskatchewan's premier pre-approves all potential pipelines through the province using social media. Also, we meet a group looking to remember and revive Chinese culture in Saskatoon. Plus, the complicated nature of culture, hair, and identity, and how stylists are helping fill the gaps.
This is CBC Saskatchewan News.
It is Thursday, February 27th, and the CBC Saskatchewan News starts right now. Hi there, thank you for watching. U.S. President Donald Trump says he wants a new oil pipeline, and it appears Saskatchewan's premier is on board. He used social media to greenlight any project crossing the province. Alexander Kwan has the details and the reaction.
Premier Scott Moe says all Saskatchewan pipelines are now pre-approved. But what does that actually mean? According to the Premier, it's a call for action. Moe was not available for an interview Thursday, but in a statement, the provincial government said it's always been supportive of the construction of critical infrastructure. Now, in the face of a tariff threat from U.S. President Donald Trump, Saskatchewan wants other provinces and the federal government to adopt its position. Still, experts say a blanket pre-approval for any pipeline is meaningless.
Materially, this doesn't mean anything, right? This is essentially nonsense. This is political discourse.
There's an entire process for a pipeline to be built, including an environmental assessment by an independent regulator and a duty to consult with Indigenous communities.
It doesn't mean anything in the sense of the regulatory process, which is, as I mentioned, something that is done at the federal level. There's a role for provincial governments if they're interested, but there's no such thing as a pre-approval federally or provincially.
What Moe's posts on social media has done is refocus the conversation on domestic energy, just as U.S. President Donald Trump has called for the Keystone XL to be built right now. The opposition NDP says a pipeline is necessary, but so are consultations.
When we made the call for our Saskatchewan task force, we were very conscious to ensure that all voices were included in that, industry voices, public sector voices, Indigenous voices. And whether Premier Moe likes it or not, those are all voices that need to be at the table.
Consultations and approvals aside, some experts say times have changed, and it may not make economic sense to build large pipelines anymore.
There's lots of evidence to suggest that pipeline companies, have turned their interests elsewhere in terms of, still getting their products to market, but by other means, using their already existing networks of infrastructure.
These projects are expensive and time-consuming to build. And with Moe's comments being described as political theater, the experts say pushing pipelines may not be a useful political tool anymore. Alexander Kwan, CBC News, Regina.
The Saskatchewan NDP is also pushing for more investment into Canadian infrastructure. The party wants all levels of government to expand rail lines, build up roads, and construct new pipelines. Leader Carla Beck says it's important to make our own plans and take action. She says the U.S. is no longer a reliable ally.
Produce world-class products that the world needs, done in a way that is on the cutting edge when it comes to standards. Environmental standards, when it comes to worker safety. These are products that the world needs right now. We need to be able to get them to those markets, and we need to stop being held hostage by our reliance on the U.S.
Beck says Canada should also look to expand access to Asia and Europe. After 3 months of searching, potential human remains have been found within the material at the Winnipeg area landfill. Experts and searchers have been sifting through debris at Prairie Green Landfill for the remains of Morgan Harris and Mercedes Myron. The two Indigenous women are two victims of a convicted serial killer. Wednesday, the province announced the discovery. The RCMP will now initiate an investigation at the site, and further identification steps are underway. On Friday, the World Health Organization is holding a meeting to talk about the flu virus vaccines for the 2025-26 Northern Hemisphere influenza season. But so far, the United States hasn't indicated they will participate. They also haven't sent the World Health Organization any data since January 20th, when Trump was inaugurated. Normally, the CDC and FDA actively participate in the discussion twice a year. This has left experts concerned about the next flu season in North America. We caught up with virologist Angela Rasmussen at USask to learn more.
Yes, they will have access to Canadian data. They will have access to data from Mexico. But the United States is the most populous country in North America with a much larger population than either Canada or Mexico. So it's really important for all North American vaccine formulations to include data from the US because that's where the majority of flu is spreading, just because there's more Americans than anybody else in North America. So it's gonna have consequences in terms of the flu vaccines that will be available in the upcoming flu season. Will probably not be as well matched as they could have been. They're going to be less effective, and ultimately that might drive down flu vaccine uptake in the US, Canada, and Mexico, and potentially elsewhere, because people will think, what's the point? Like, these vaccines don't work very well. And it should be mentioned that the vaccines are not perfect. From year to year, the vaccines sometimes are not well matched, but it's really important to note that even when they're not perfectly matched, they still provide some degree of protection against influenza and severe influenza. And it should be noted that about 650,000 people die worldwide every year from seasonal flu. So having a vaccine that is as protective as possible is really important. And the people of North America, and potentially in other continents as well, will not have that advantage because we're going to be missing all of that US flu surveillance data.
Manitoba has become the first province to sign a pharmacare deal with the federal government. The health minister is hopeful it expands to other provinces and territories.
I think changing our healthcare system is about taking any progress you can get anywhere, anytime. And so I will happily work with any jurisdiction that wants to improve our health system. So there are going to be more deals. They're going to be soon, but this was a very fundamental one.
The agreement allows Manitoba to get $219 million over 4 years. It's expected to begin in June. The universal coverage includes medication for diabetes, contraceptives, and other medical supplies. The Federal Pharmacare Act became law in October. It had been a key part of the supply and confidence deal with the federal NDP. Buffy St. Marie has been scrubbed out of an exhibit at the Canadian Museum for Human Rights in Winnipeg. The CMHR says it removed a profile of her from an exhibit dedicated to human rights defenders. The museum says it happened in December following consultations with advisors, colleagues, and elders. The decision comes more than a year after an investigation by the CBC's Fifth Estate raised questions about St. Marie's claims of Indigenous ancestry. At the time, her lawyer told CBC she's never misrepresented her ancestry. CBC reached out to the singer about the museum's decision, but she has yet to respond. Right now, just remnants remain of the bygone days when a prosperous Chinatown existed in Saskatoon. Liam O'Connor has been looking into a grassroots project looking to shine a light on it.
About a century ago, this was a thriving Chinatown in Saskatoon. It no longer exists, but a local group is trying to revive that forgotten history. It's called Project Riversdale Chinatown. It involves art installations, community programming, and preserving archives.
We're thinking to reconnect with this part of history and this Chinese community within Saskatoon, and to recall on that part of history and try to gather more people back to Riversdale to make it a better place to be.
The story of Saskatoon's Chinatown goes back to the early 20th century. That's when Chinese immigrants came over and set up businesses in what is now known as the River Landing area. But the community was disrupted in 1930, forced to move because the city was making way for a technical school.
They started moving Chinatown off. And what they did, they didn't just demolish it. Back in the day, we moved buildings around all the time. And so most of those buildings were picked up and moved across the tracks, across Avenue A into Riversdale.
Only remnants of that era remain, with Chinese businesses scattered through the Riversdale neighborhood.
Unfortunately, they closed down during COVID, but this was once the go-to store for the Chinese community just to get their utensils, their bowls and chopsticks, and also good groceries.
Hermes Chung is hopeful the project leads to Chinatown gates as an art installment. In the short term, it's likely they'd only be temporary, but they'd like them to be permanent. The group also has other ideas for engagement. That includes directing people to businesses or parts of the community that share art and information about the Chinese history of the area.
We are trying to create different pieces of art that recall to this part of the history and the identity of us being Asian immigrants and also diaspora communities in Canada. I think Saskatoon offers this great platform for discussion and for the dialogues.
Project Riversdale Chinatown is trying to secure physical location in the neighborhood. It would serve as a cultural hub for them to celebrate the past and plan for the future. Liam O'Connor, CBC News, Saskatoon.
It's not just the prairies that plunged into a deep freeze for parts of February. In eastern Switzerland, hikers are taking advantage of freezing winter weather to get a rare glimpse inside short-lived ice caves formed from fast-flowing meltwater. Torrential meltwater from the glacier carves out these huge tunnels as it surges under the ice. During cold winter months, freeze conditions allow visitors to walk inside some tunnels. This water's ice caves have left visitors in awe.
When I walk in, it's like something that is very big compared to me. I feel like I'm a small creature when I'm in this here, and I feel like I'm a part of nature.
My first feeling, intuition, when I was in this big one here, I thought it's a door to a parallel world.
Wasn't expecting him to whisper that. In summer, the huge ice tunnels become partially dangerous or even impossible to visit as thawing ice blocks can fall, and the water stream is literally torrential. Not as crazy out there in Saskatchewan as things melt today. A bit of a sloppy mess, though, in Saskatoon with all the melting. But despite the need for frequent car washes, and don't forget the windshield washer fluid, winter is starting to feel like it could be, maybe, in the rearview mirror. But remember, it's only February. We have not hit March yet. Riley will be back with his full forecast after the break. We'll see what the weekend has in store. Stay with us. Police in New Mexico have released new details surrounding the deaths of Oscar-winning actor Gene Hackman and his wife. Investigators have not determined how the couple may have died. Steve Futterman has the latest.
In New Mexico, law enforcement officials made the shocking discovery. They found the bodies of Gene Hackman and his wife Betsy Arakawa in separate rooms. Near her body were some pills. It appears they may have been dead for several days. Also found dead inside the home one of their 3 dogs. Last night, officials said there was no indication of foul play. But in an affidavit filed today, law enforcement officials said the deaths are suspicious enough to conduct a full search and investigation. An initial examination showed no sign of carbon monoxide leaks or poisoning. Gene Hackman's first big break came in 1967, starring in the Warren Beatty film Bonnie and Clyde. 4 years later, he hit the Hollywood jackpot.
All right, Popeye's here!
Playing New York detective Poppy Doyle in The French Connection and winning the first of 2 Oscars. In 1986 came perhaps Hackman's most memorable scene, playing a high school coach of an underdog team in Hoosiers and delivering a classic pregame pep talk.
I don't care what the scoreboard says at the end of the game. In my book, we're going to be winners. When he fires that, take out your pistols.
In 1992, he won his second Oscar for Unforgiven. Gene Hackman said from the age of 10, he knew he wanted to be an actor, but success wasn't assured. When he was starting out in the mid-1950s, Hackman and another struggling actor, Dustin Hoffman, were voted by fellow acting students the least likely to succeed. They couldn't have been more wrong. Steve Futterman for CBC News, Los Angeles.
A little more light every day. A live look now at Regina, where it is still 4 degrees. We're getting closer to the end of the week. Riley Lachuk now with a look at your forecast.
Well, Sam, certainly a bit of a mixed bag really across the province today. A little bit of sunshine later in the day, some clouds early. And quite a bit of snow and some mixed precipitation for northern parts of the province. I know we did see some gusty winds, even seeing some gusts upwards of 60, even 70 kilometers an hour into the southwest corner of the province throughout the afternoon hours. In the north, Prince Albert, La Ronge, into the northwestern corner of the province, getting quite a bit of snow. Radar coverage not quite this far north, but all of this moving in a line south into Manitoba throughout the day. So yes, some accumulating snow as expected for parts of the province. For the southern half, though, Another day of above seasonal temperatures. Regina getting up to +3, as did Saskatoon this afternoon. And I just want to show you the temperature spread that we had across the province. Collins Bay, Stony Rapids, -15, -18 degrees. Compare that to Maple Creek, 30 degrees warmer at +15. So quite the spread from north to south, and you can really see where that Pacific air, that warm air, really having an influence on parts of the province as we got throughout the afternoon hours once again. So the rest of that snow moves off into Manitoba as we get into the overnight hours. Behind that, mostly cloudy skies, and out of some of this, I do think we do have the chance of seeing some scattered flurries. Maybe even as far south, a slight chance of some of that into the early morning hours into Regina, but I think a better chance of that in Saskatoon, into the Parkland, into Yorkton, I think has a pretty good chance of seeing a couple of scattered flurries yet as we get into the morning hours on Friday. Behind that, a cold front sweeps through, and that will clear skies out for Friday into Saturday. I know still a little bit of cloud cover hanging around, but certainly a little bit brighter as we get through the afternoon hours, and certainly by the time we get into the weekend. Snow to come, really, Saskatoon into Regina, into the southeast corner, trace if that. Most of the snow has fallen already, but places like South End into La Ronge, Cumberland House, Hudson Bay picking up maybe another 3 to 5 centimeters by the time we get into the morning hours tomorrow. So we are looking at winds staying fairly gusty as we get through the day on Friday, at least to the early part of the day. So starting with winds out of the northwest gusting to 50 in Regina, that is going to help really pull those temperatures down as we get through the afternoon. So bit of a more seasonal day as we get through Friday. Temperatures rebounding, though, as we get into the next several days here. So, as I mentioned, still fairly seasonal. -3 in Regina for your Friday. Those winds a little bit gusty into the morning hours, but dying off as we get later into the afternoon. Back up to -1 on Saturday. Some peaks of sunshine. We don't really get into a bit of a sunnier pattern until we get into Sunday, but then clouds kind of hanging around as we get into the middle of next week once again. Saskatoon, a chance we could see some flurries in the morning, -3 for Friday, back up above 0 into the weekend, varying amounts of sun and cloud, and temperature, Sam, hanging right around the freezing mark.
Thanks, Riley. Finding a new hairstylist or barber can be really stressful. And when it comes to a particular type of hair or culture, it can become even more complicated. The evolution of Black hairstyles is rooted in Black history and identity. We stopped by a Regina salon to learn more about how meaningful the craft is and who is filling the gaps.
I'm originally from Nigeria, and I got interested in doing hair just because barber messed my hairline up. And in the community, we all know how bad that feels for a barber to mess your hairline up. So I saw the need to start doing my own hairline myself. Then when I realized I got better with it, I started doing my little brother's hair, my dad's hair, the neighbor's hair, and before you know it, I took it up as a business. When it comes to hair, it's a little bit sensitive, and you know, everybody basically have different ways they want to express themselves, and the hair is plays a very vital role in, you know, in how you want to be seen, how you want to be looked at, because when you approach a stranger, the first thing they look at is your face and your hair.
I grew up in the Kingdom of Eswatini, which is a country in Southern Africa. So when I was in primary school and high school, boys weren't allowed to have twists or braids or cornrows. This would have been considered too long.
Yep,
even.
That's right.
African hairstyles are not necessarily viewed as professional.
Yeah, I've experienced it myself because I have locks myself, and even when my clients speak to me about it, I tend to just advise them, you know, if you're going for a job and you have the instinct that you'll be profiled right away based on the kind of job you're going to, I recommend you go presentable just as you want them to see you if you really want that job. Once you're able to prove to the company that you're smart and they shouldn't judge you by your looks. Having locks doesn't really represent my professionalism quality. Just based on my personal value, how I present myself, and how I carry myself, you know, it goes a long way.
When I first came to Canada in 2019, obviously I knew no one here, I had no friends and family, and I was in need of a haircut. That was my first time being aware of the fact that I am now in a country where I am the minority, and I'm surrounded by people who don't look like me. But eventually, through a friend, I think, I ended up finding you. I found your contact, and so you were the first person to cut my hair.
It feels good knowing that I'm actually filling a gap and I'm serving the community in a space where I'm actually needed. Everybody deserves to look the way that will make them feel the most confident. Thank you so much. I appreciate it, man. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
The final countdown is on to Hollywood's biggest night. The 97th Academy Awards are on Sunday, and the red carpet has been unraveled, literally. Conan O'Brien is hosting, and he lent a helping hand outside the Dolby Theatre on Wednesday. The Oscars air on Sunday at 6 p.m. local time. We'll be back after the break. Volunteers at Bing Bend National Park in Southwest Texas have discovered a fuzzy new plant. They call it the woolly devil. The scientific name is Ovicula biradiata. Ovicula is Latin for tiny sheep, and biradiata references the 2 ray petals in each flower. It falls in the same family as daisies, and it's the first new genus to be discovered in a U.S. national state park in almost 50 years.
So some places still looking at some lingering snow as we get into the overnight hours. Into the south, a chance of flurries. Most of that the further north you go, but still staying fairly windy into the overnight hours tonight. -7 in Saskatoon, Humboldt looking at -13 overnight tonight. You can really see where that cold front starts to drop south as we get through the overnight hours, and still staying at the freezing mark or close to it for much of extreme southern parts of the province through the night tonight. La Ronge -21. Looking at some lingering snow into places like Pelican Narrows, into Cumberland House as we get overnight into Friday morning. By the time we get into the morning hours, back into a mainly cloudy sky, and we start to get some sun back, albeit not as warm as it has been. Places like La Ronge getting up to around -13-ish through the afternoon hours, so definitely a bit more seasonal. Into the south, we do have a chance of some scattered flurries in the morning, and Sam, temperatures closer to seasonal, although looking at temperatures close to 6 to 9 degrees into southwestern parts of the province.
Picture it. You're on a boat on the Pacific Ocean, and suddenly you're surrounded by thousands of dolphins. It's a scene that played out in front of a California tour boat captain last week. Evan Brodsky was out scouting on the California coast when he witnessed this dolphin lover's fantasy. He's a captain and a videographer with Monterey Bay Whale Watch. He estimates around 2,000 dolphins came together. He was on a small 6-meter inflatable boat when the animals decided to swim up close to the boat. Brodsky says he has never seen a superpod this big before, and some of his coworkers even shed a tear at the sight. Pretty neat. And before we go, a programming note. Friday will be my last show for about 6 months on the CBC Saskatchewan News. I'm not leaving CBC. I'm heading into CBC Radio 1, filling in for Leisha Grabinski on Blue Sky as she goes off on a big family adventure. So tune in for that. And that's it from us. For more news anytime, you can always head to our website or to our YouTube channel, or you can always download the CBC News app. Thanks for watching.